gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior. Blaze with fire in the presence of God. And we heard God speak, and we said, no more. We'll send Moses. We'll trust what he says, but don't speak to us anymore, God. We can't take it. And they send Moses up the mountain, and what do? They make a golden calf down in the valley and say, this is the God that led us out of Egypt. Let's worship it. You can be so close. You can see the miracles of God and yet perish in unbelief. That should shock us. You fail to enter God's rest. Therefore, the writer of Hebrews has a response. Therefore, look at verse 12. Take care, brethren, that there not be found in any one of you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. Here's the lesson, and this is how you should apply it. Take care that there not be found in you an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. You can be so close to the action. You can be in church all your life. You can be involved in everything, but in the end be found to have an evil, unbelieving heart that falls away from the living God. So what should we do? What should we do? Don't leave us hanging. Don't leave us hanging, Apostle. What should we do? Look at verse 13. Here's what we should do. But encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still called what? Today. As long as it is still called today, so that none of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Do you see the connection here? Verse 12, don't let an evil, unbelieving heart be found in you. Don't let it happen. But here's what you do. Today, as long as it is still called today, encourage one another day after day, so that none of you are hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So what should we say from this verse, verse 13? I think it implies this. It implies that salvation is a community project. Look again at verse 13. But encourage one another. It's hard to have a one another when you're by yourself, right? When you're Lone Ranger Christian, it's hard to have a one another there. But encourage one another day after day, as long as it's still called today, so that none of you will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. Application, you need the church. You need the church. You cannot go this alone. You need people to come alongside you day after day, encouraging you as long as it is still called today. If you try to go out by yourself, he says, the deceitfulness of sin, it's so much easier for it to harden your heart. You get out there by yourself and you get jaded. Your heart becomes hardened. You don't have people alongside to fellowship, to encourage you. You need the body. If we were to turn over to Hebrews chapter 10 and hear what he has to say a little bit later on, he's going to say this, Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23, said, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful. Again, he says, you got to persevere, hold fast the confession. Verse 24, let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our assembling together, as is the habit of some. You hear that? You want to persevere, you want to hold fast your confession. This is what you do. Let's consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, and not forsake our meeting together, as is the habit of some. And it's to their loss. You need one another. We need each other. We need to be the body to one another. Brothers and sisters, do not buy the modern mindset that says that religion is a private thing. It is a private thing. I can be a religious person and not be a part of any church. I can practice my religion, just me and my BlackBerry together. No, it is a lie. It is a lie of the world that religion is solely a private thing. Again, Hebrews chapter 3, verse 13, you need one another, but encourage one another day after day, as long as it is still called today, so that none of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. When we gather together, it's not to talk football. It's not to talk about what's going on the television, how our favorite show is progressing. It's to talk about Christ. It's to encourage one another, to be the body to each other. Make that your mission when you come to church, to encourage and to be encouraging to others, so that none of you be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. This is one of God's ordained means to keep us in the faith. Do you realize that? God has ordained we persevere, but He's got means that we persevere through, and one of them is the church, being together, being the body to one another. Look with me, verse 14. Verse 14, for we have become partakers of Christ if we hold fast the beginning of our assurance firm until the end. The faith that we began the Christian life with is the faith we must hold firm every day until the end. That's what verse 14 is saying. You have become partakers of Christ if you hold fast the beginning of our assurance, the faith you had at the beginning, firm until the end. Paul pictures the Christian life like a race. We're running the race. And there may be some who start off well. Man, they're sprinting at the beginning. But if they stop, if they don't finish, what good is it? If they go off the path and are disqualified, what good is it? You don't finish the race. It doesn't matter if you started out sprinting. You don't finish. Only those who hold fast the faith firm from the beginning to the end will be saved. Do you understand that? Only those who hold fast the faith firm from beginning to end will be saved. Now, you might be thinking this morning, when did Brother KJ cease being a Baptist and become an Arminian? Because it sounds to me like he's saying, I can lose my salvation. That's what it sounds like. What it sounds like to me, I can lose my salvation. Don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand me on this point. It is true that once you're saved, you're always saved. Perseverance of the saints, whatever you want to call it, it's true. It is gloriously true. The Apostle Paul said, those whom he called, he also justified. Those whom he justified, he also glorified. Every single person who's been justified, saved, will be glorified one day. No one falls out. No one has been justified and will fail to be glorified. Okay? It is gloriously true. Once saved, always saved, perseverance of the saints, however you want to put it. It is true. But do not let this truth, do not let sin in your heart take this truth and blunt what the writer of Hebrews is telling to you now. Don't take a truth and make it blunt other things. Let me shock you. Let me shock you. The Apostle Paul is the greatest believer in perseverance of the saints, once saved, always saved, that there is. You can't get better. But listen to what he says in 1 Corinthians 9:26. It says, therefore, I run in such a way as not without aim. I box in such a way as not beating the air, but I discipline my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached the gospel to others, I myself will not be disqualified. I've preached the gospel to others, but I must discipline myself. I must work out my own salvation with fear and trembling, lest I be disqualified before I make it to the end of the race. And friends, if you live long enough, you will see this happen. You will see people who come into the church, and man, it seems that they are on fire. They are doing all kinds of things, but then years go by, and where are they? Where are they? It saddens me to no end, but a friend of mine in college, if you were to ask me, describe this guy to me, I would say he has the most tender conscience I have ever seen. Tender conscience. Just wants to know he's doing what is right.